Watu wametoka kwa slum wameingia estate hawajaingia. Today we are giving you keys, not just to open a door, not just to open a house, but to open a home, to welcoming you into dignity, into a different life. Mwezi wa 8, mwezi wa 9 tutakuja kupatiana nyumba zingine 5,000. Mara 5 ya nyinyi mlio hapa leo. Tutarudi tena baadaye mwaka mpya tupatiane nyumba zingine 5,000.
All right, that's President William Ruto in Mukuru yesterday while handing over the keys to the homeowners, 1,080 units as communicated. And Professor raised a couple of questions that I think I want to hear what the two chairpersons have to say, starting with you, Mheshimiwa Johana Ngeno. And please explain, by the way, how many floors are those blocks?
In Mukuru?
Yes.
11 floors.
11 floors?
Yes.
And you said they have water?
Correct.
Do you know the estimate of how much water is required there and the source?
Of course, you know, apart from the aspersions cast by my friend here, that this money is being eaten.
No. Don't misquote me.
That is exactly what you're saying. And it's on record. It has to be made clear.
Exactly. Money being eaten by who?
Today, we are celebrating the launch of homes. And yet somebody is claiming money is being eaten.
No, Mheshimiwa.
We should be able to...
On record. I did not say that. I did not say that.
I think what he said is that the government wants to get involved because there's desire to eat.
Exactly.
Yes, correct. That is what he meant.
So I don't know that.
But now we are... Yesterday, the president was handing over keys.
Yes.
To homeowners, new homeowners from the slums.
Yes.
Now tell me, if that money was eaten, then why were the homes being launched? Where was the money that completed these homes came from?
That's not the discussion, Mheshimiwa.
But anyway, that is not beside the point.
It is
that is beside the point.
But I'm very interested in what you say.
You know, as a member of parliament, my job is oversight.
Right.
To ensure that the money collected from the people of this country are put into good use. When we appropriate this money during the budgetary allocations, we appropriate the money, we allocate the money, and later on we go around looking into the projects which had been destined or designated by this amount of money. It is our work. That is our work.
So, Mheshimiwa, you're saying...
We ensure...
You are saying your expectation is that...
I thought you completed your session. Prof. Even when you are lecturing in class, you allow yourself time to lecture, and then you allow students to respond. So you should be a very good lecturer.
Because I am. I'm a good one.
What I think we are missing is the fact that what exactly was the intention? Initially, these projects are meant to have been done by the private sector, just like what my friend here has said, properly mentioned, the president of the architects. It should have been done by the private sector. And actually the private sector are doing 90%. But do we have enough homes? In fact, what we have are enough houses for rent. But these ones are not for rent. These houses are not meant for rent. These houses are meant to be owned by the residents, citizens of this country. What we have in the country at the moment are houses, and we have quite a number. But what I think the main agenda of this particular program was to make sure that people become homeowners, not house renters. You see? And that is where the difference is.
How much did it cost to put up this Mukuru units?
1 unit, I think, and that is a question for the architects and the QSs. But what we normally ask as a committee is how much per square meter, and that is between 40.
Actually, Chairman, you know the project that you're saying 11 floors, 1,080 units.
Yes.
By the time there's a decision being made on how much every dweller should pay, there must be a figure.
Of course, there has to be a calculation, a figure.
So how much?
But our area of concern is how much was used to build 1 unit,
and how
1
much
square meter. 1 square meter is 40,000 per square meter. So when you do 1 unit, that depends now on the size of the room and etc. But for us, as the oversight, what we question is how much was used to build.
So you don't know the whole.
We know, of course.
Figure?
We know. It depends. When we want to calculate the whole project, we know the cost of the whole project.
That's fascinating. That
the cost per unit
is the oversight.
The cost per unit.
Sorry, Chairman. As the oversight committee, you don't know how much money has gone into.
No, we know. Of course, we know.
How much?
There is a figure.
How much?
As in the whole of Mukuru, or the whole of our 1 unit.
Okay, tell me what figure you know.
The figures I know is that, for example, if 1 bedroom, you start from a bed sitter, you go to 1 bedroom, you go to 3 bedroom, you go to whatever number of bedrooms. So it depends on the square meter. And 1 bedroom or one bedroom costs roughly around 600 to 700,000.
600.
I mean, a bed sitter.
And by the way, how do you access the 11th floor?
There are lifts.
They're working?
Yes.
Okay.
There's water, there are lifts, there are all sorts of. And by the way, this is not the first project in the affordable housing.
Yeah.
There is the Park Road. But you see the difference between this one and the Park Road and the Buckstone in Mombasa and the Bondeni in Nakuru. The difference is that this one was designated for the slum dwellers. But the Park Road and the other units which had already been launched, people are already living there. These ones were for those who want to own homes, to buy homes. So a unit to do a unit cost up to, for example, if it's a bed sitter, between 700 to 800, 600 to 800. 1 bedroom cost up to around 1.5 million. 2 bedroom cost up to around 2 million. 3 bedroom cost up to around 2.7.
That's the cost of production or the
cost of production and the cost of sale. The cost of sale is slightly, there's a slight difference.
You're confusing me, Chairman, because you just told me that 1 bedroom costs between 600,000 and 700,000.
Correct.
Now you have turned that to be the bed sitter. And
that is a bed sitter. That is why the bed sitter is selling at around 800,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
800,000. Chairman Chanzo, you had a few things to respond to what Professor said here, because he raised questions about the involvement of government and why it should be the private sector getting into this program.
No, by the way, I'm very happy about the point that Professor is raising.
Yeah.
You see, this is not something that is being done now and is going to stop now. It's something, there is a starting point for everything. Eh? And in this particular case, I think we all remember that even the calling, if you read those who read the Professor and all of us, 1963, you know, it was the issue of the same thing about food. I mean, it was about poverty, literacy, diseases, and by extension, housing. Eh?
Yeah.
And you see, we have not been able to achieve this. We have had very many organizations coming. Even yesterday, and again when we were in Kwale, the other time when we were launching some project there with the president, I was very happy that organizations like Shelter Afrique, who had come here much earlier, to look into issues of how we can address these issues. We have not been able to address them, and mainly it is because of politics. And I've told you something which is very important, that all these heads of state, they have had this in their manifestos.
Yeah.
But I don't want to go back to what happened after the election, this last election. The things that are still going on now, you still feature them. About the kind of fighting there was. But, once you lose an election,
yeah,
the idea with another person is wrong. We cannot grow that way. And you see now, because of the harmony, that's why you saw that we were there, in that, at that place. Everybody talking almost the same language, because they're listening to their masters. But the main issue for me, as a professional, I'm one of the senior fellows in the profession now today, in the build sector. as a QS and much senior than that. I'm very happy about this, and in fact, what Professor is raising, and I'm also happy that my colleagues are here, and I like the chairman of housing. We've been with him struggling up and down.
Yeah.
I think we need a forum, maybe, Professor, we need a forum like what I'm seeing engineers doing. You know, I've attended quite a number of their forums, and I've been telling these professionals, my colleagues here, when you got a meeting like that, don't just enclose yourselves. You go to a place like Serena, Mombasa, and then you enclose yourself. Let the media know. Because there is no point, like every day, on the newspaper here.
Yeah.
You know, we are just getting either Huru, either Gachagua, or something. But what I learned about the newspaper myself, when I was in school, it was supposed to disseminate information and even to educate. But you see, we end up just discussing.
But Chairman, tell me, because there are real issues they are raising, including the President of Architects here, about the impact of a project to the community and whether there is the support system that you require, the social amenities that you're talking about. Do you see any social amenities in that project in Mukuru?
Yeah, in fact, I was coming to that because, you know, the other thing that I was going to talk about myself.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you'll get it. You know, if you look at places, let's just take an example like places like Kilimani here, a place like Kileleshwa.
Yeah.
And this came from yesterday when the governor was thanking the PS that they're working very well when it comes to plan approvals. But there's something that me as a professional, and I think my friends can talk about it, my colleagues here. You know, the places here, starting from there, and I think that's why this question is very relevant. And this is why I'm saying this forum is very useful. If we can take forward what is here. You see, even just from the common sense point of view, a place like Kileleshwa, during the Mzungu time, it was supposed to be an acre or half an acre, accommodating about a family of about 5.
Yeah.
But the city council, which was there by the planning, you know, there was a planning department in city council, which was very effective, as much as they used to talk about corruption. But they had to get these approvals. So the question which is being raised now, even yesterday, Nani, my brother, when we were there, you remember the kind of traffic jam we were encountering when we were coming out of that place?
Correct.
So we are putting up those. But I want to challenge. Devolution meant a lot. You know, this devolution, how we came up with devolution, it's not a simple matter.
Yeah.
It's only the poor have come up. They don't know what devolution meant. In fact, they don't even like these things of CDF. We were saying that the person in Nairobi, like where you are, you cannot know what is happening in a place like where he comes from in the village. So we said we devolve, we take money there, and the people in charge will handle that. But they have taken that to be their own pocket money. The same thing with the devolution. So I'm addressing this issue. The county government of Nairobi should be working very closely to get this approval so that these services are provided. And that's why I'm saying that this forum is important, so that we can bring up this issue. Because you see, the moment the governor gets into the office, in fact, I've been surprised that when somebody is sitting in Nairobi here, he doesn't know devolution meant that he should also go to Riruta and see what is happening there.
Okay. And President, talk to us about.
So I'm saying that finally that on that question that you raised, that we need seriously, because the number of units that he's mentioning, we are talking only about Mukuru, but you know there are about 200 sites all over the country. So there are quite a number of houses that we are going to achieve when they are through, and if they are managed properly.
Yeah.
It's not only Mukuru, they're all over the country.
I hear of a figure of nearly 150,000 units that are under construction as we speak. But obviously still falls short of the promise for 1 year.
But what I agree with seriously is that we need to have a forum where we can discuss so that we can get these ideas. Because let me tell you, it is very
maybe you can use this as the first forum.
You know the trouble we have in this country, and if you compare with other countries, you know, I don't know much more whether you know that. You know, when we go for this benchmarking, the time is too short. You know, when you want to go to a place like, say, China, You know, it's about 3 days. You travel 2 days. You go there, you are given, maybe in the morning you are taken to a room like this one to show on the screen what they do. In the afternoon, you are taken to the factory or somewhere.
Yeah.
But I had a chance, 2023, June, July. I went to China for 3.5 weeks. And I saw what I saw in China. And I even said it. And there's the reason why somebody like Trump, you know, from his office, he doesn't know what's happening.
And have you been able to transfer that now to the
That's the thing that I'm very happy about. This is the reason why I'm saying what we are doing is the right thing. It's only that we need to involve many more people.
No, you haven't answered my question.
Yeah?
You were in China for 3.5 weeks.
Yes.
Whatever you saw, have you managed to transfer it to the National Housing Corporation?
This is what we are trying to do now. You know, you can't do it in a day. Because you see, you can see the kind of argument we are having now.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that I'm very positive about that.
Right. So
that's the reason why we are doing.
Sorry.
That's the reason why we are doing foresight. You know, we have got successful projects in Homa Bay.
I'll get back to you,
Embu.
Chairman. I promise you.
Yeah.
Mr. President, tell me, when we are talking about these programs, where do you see as the best place for the private sector? Because he says there are challenges of procurement, but at the same time, there's a financing model. What do you see as the best model when it comes to involvement of the private sector, knowing too well there has to be recovery of the money that you put in?
Sam, I think first let me correct everyone here. I think I'm being boxed that I'm the president of architects. AAK is an umbrella body of 8 professions. So if I'm sitting here, I'm speaking for 8 different professions in the built environment. And that's what I'm going to speak to in terms of their engagement. And when I'm talking about engagement, I'm talking about meaningful engagement in this process. When we talk about the issues of procurements and the challenges that we're going through, that's why you have consultants. An average developer cannot be able to undertake even a small residential house, one, by themselves. They require a team of designers, a team of builders, and a lot of processes that come around in terms of procurement and the actual execution on site. Now, the evidence is very clear that this AHP program process is not a simple thing. It's not something about putting the money, because the money has been found. Okay? I don't think it's a question of time. If we look at the program so far, it's 8 years old. And for me, I want us to transcend governments. Because if the program is to deliver something meaningful, building of cities is not something you can do in 5 years cycles. You need to look at, AHP needs to be assessed from when it started, and then we target, even have milestones, say in 2027, when it will be 10 years old, what have we achieved? Why have we not been able to achieve these numbers? And remember, the figures have been dropping since the time it was launched. The initial political pronouncement, if I'm not wrong, was 1 million units. Correct. And then later it came to 500,000. Then, of course, it came to 250. The other figure that are being said right now is around 200,000. Now, why is that happening? It is because the challenges which have been identified, everyone knows them. In fact, the only person who's making a lot of noise about this affordable housing being successful is politicians. And I wish they could actually sit back and keep quiet and wait for the work to be done, because I feel as if even the definition of what affordable housing, it's the MPs who have decided. They have said it must cost, as bedsitter must cost 600,000. If you ask a QS, that development of that unit, because it's on 11th floor, it's on 20th floor, it's not going to be the same as doing a single room on the ground. Correct. There is the issues we've just raised about, for example, the water. Having water, having water like a reservoir for this area, pumping it up. Having things like lifts. Remember, these are guys who are living in slums, okay? So the government is not going to stop at building the houses. They will have to manage those houses. They will have to ensure, as that person asked on Twitter, that these so-called segregated or underprivileged people have water that is better supply than even the formal development where people are paying. Okay, so how do you do that? By starting off with the point where we are saying that we're now counting the units. Okay, now you talked about the amenities. I think there's a fire station that is being built. It has not been completed. And I would like us to see, even look at something like the schools. I think there's a school in Mukuru. I've been to that scheme once. I think it's too small. I didn't see a lot of public open spaces. When we're talking about infrastructure, we need to look at how do people from this area move to their work, because they also need to be enabled to continue living by getting, a public transport to and fro workspaces. And of course, the third space, which is always somewhere away from home and work, could be church, could be, a place of recreation. So, where I see the solution lies in terms of how do we develop this appropriately and sustainably. The first things first is that we must involve all built environment professionals. This is a golden opportunity for even emerging professions like landscape architects, maybe not emerging, but rather the ones which are unregulated, construction project managers, interior designers, there's environmental design consultants. We also have architects, engineers, and planners. I think the government must intentionally and meaningfully engage all of us to a point whereby we are overwhelmed with work. Now, here is the thing. How the whole program started, before we had a push, and I had Chair Chanzuya talk about the issues of a forum. We started off by signing an MOU between IQSK, IEK, and AAK to create something we call a housing forum. The housing forum was supposed to be a thought leader in terms of the process, because that's really what we are trained for. We are trained to simulate how to develop these projects. And then the contractors and the building team will come in together with the financier, who in this case would be government, to be able to implement. Now, that forum has not taken off. Why? Because part of the funding that was supposed to go for housing was supposed to actually have this forum operationalized in terms of being given some funding for research, being given some payments for even young professionals that we were going to include in this forum, and even other seasoned professionals, to develop the designs, simulate all the projects, all the possible site analysis, issues to do with geotechnical studies, so that when a consortia gets the project, with a big amount that they've been allocated of 2.5% for a whole team, they can just go to site and just oversight. So there will be this database of typologies, houses, and every region would be special, because if you are going to different counties, you expect different local materials. To a point where the forum was even supposed to help in cottage industry, not just for building people, workers, but even people who are developing local materials like brick making or the local fabricators, and create a whole ecosystem of jobs for this so that this has an impact. Now, what has happened is that initially the first contracts were given to builders. And then most of those builders will then look for designers to help them. Later on, after a little bit push, we started having some tenders being put for consortia. Now, we are doing this thing all wrong because we started off with money. We said we want money. Then after that, we say we want builders and fundis and everyone else. Then after that, we said, oh, we actually need designers. So we had a very difficult negotiation as professionals to get the amount of money we were allocated. And that is where the rubber meets the road in terms of planning, in terms of visualization, in terms of protecting this program from any sudden things like material price changes. Now, that has not happened, and we're trying to get there, but you can see the figures speak for themselves. The reason we are not being able to develop this is because we went it the wrong way around. Okay. And I'm happy, sorry, just to finish some, I'm happy that we have not done many of this. I know we should have done more. I'm happy we have not done many of this, because majority of what has been done now will have issues that if we start going deeper and start investigating things to do with the green design, things to do with the quality, indoor air quality, things to do with how people, access these spaces, then we'll start having very critical, comments to give about the units that have been developed. Some of them are good, but I think the majority will still need a lot of work in terms of the design as a holistic design. Who's
supervising this at the moment?
Yes.
Who is supervising is the question.
There are consultants supervising it, but the disgruntled consultants, some of them are saying the amount of money they are given is small, and then they go to site, and then they find changes, because if you have a design that has been a typical design, if you go to different sites, Different sites require different inputs. But there's a consortium of designers supervising the ones which are ongoing. Yes.
Okay. Prof, the reason I'm asking this question, last year I was in Nyeri County and I was speaking to the governor of Nyeri, who was telling me about the affordable housing program. I think initially it was supposed to be about 3 floors, but the president visited and said that he wants more floors on top, and that was settled. But the project sort of stalled after that. How do we do it professionally so that we make decisions with everyone on board, including the political class, to express their interests, but at the same time leave it to the professionals who know what needs to happen when, and they can advise on even some of the issues that he's highlighting?
No, thank you. And just building up on the same, as you said, the bigger question whether this is the right or wrong thing, we passed. So basically, we're just looking at what government is doing and how it could be done better. You see, as George has highlighted there, the technical issues that one considers in when we're putting up these buildings, and there are development control requirements, there are normal urban requirements, there are issues around the social amenities, there are issues around services, there are issues around costs and so on. And just a high-level one to highlight this, we've seen places that are really just low-rise rural areas, and people are putting there 10-story buildings, unaffordable housing. Because why? Because we can. And, and the question is that the optimal way of doing development in those areas? The answer is just no. Let me highlight one specific issue to illustrate this particular point. We have the issue of services and the service costs. I always tell people that the reason why the poor tend to be on the ground is because the ground provides the services and the amenities. I'll highlight several. I'll highlight water, for example. You can imagine carrying water to a 15-story building or every day in your jerrycan. 20-liter jerrycan. Let's look at lifts. The guy is on the ground, doesn't need a lift. The guy on the 12th floor, 18th floor, must have a lift that must function all the time. We are talking about, this has been even highlighted by Mheshimiwa here, that there is Wi-Fi, there is gas, there is electricity, there is water, there are lifts and so on. The higher you go, the more the services. What we are not being told is what are the actual costs of these services and who's paying for them. I know government wants to again highlight that when you are paying your 3,900 or whatever it is they're paying in Mukuru, it covers services. The services it actually covers is lifts. It doesn't pay for your water. It doesn't pay for your electricity. It doesn't. It doesn't pay for Wi-Fi. Mheshimiwa told us here, of course, that it doesn't even pay for gas. So basically what you're saying is that your actual cost of living in Mukuru should be carefully calculated. The truth of the matter is that it is between 7,000 to 10,000 per month. If you factor
inclusive of the monthly payments?
Yes, inclusive of monthly payment.
Is it a mortgage or what is that?
It's a mortgage.
Yeah.
Basically, it's a mortgage and mortgage insurance. And then is meant to cover for service, but that service,